Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield here on the Rural Radio Network. Another interesting week, shall we say? We're going to take a look at what's been happening with those slaughter numbers. Rates aren't where we'd like to see them. We've also got some softer cash trade. We'll also look at what's happening in the box beef, the dollar, and really the backlog of cattle. My question is, can we really catch up, and how long is it going to take? We're going to look at all of that today with Brad Kooima as he joins us with Kooima and Varlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And well, let's start out with these slaughter rates. Obviously, numbers have picked up, but they're not where we need them to be.
No, they're getting a little better. 118 today, 118 yesterday. I would like to see us in that 120 to 22 range. Of course, when we were looking at a couple of weeks prior to this, we were running like 112 to 114. So, it's absenteeism due to sickness, largely COVID. It does seem like this is starting to work its way through different regional systems or areas. So I do expect next week's slaughter to get better. But to your point, I don't want to stand here and, beat the drum about being really, really bearish. I'm not, but it's pretty hard to deny, Susan, that we probably underkilled the supply by 100,000 or so far this month. Now, can we catch up? Yeah. I think the packer is incentivized to do that. Is that a word? Incentivized?
Yeah, works for me.
Wants to. He's greedy. He'd like to kill as many as he can with the margins the way they are, right? So that'll help. Of course, the other part of that supply issue is the fact that our weather, for the most part, has been really, really good. And so performance has been outstanding. So that's what's driving this average weight thing. Now, today I see the steers were down a bit. Heifers about the same week on week, but steers were down, I believe, about 6 pounds. That's a good step. But because of this performance, the weight is a little bigger too, which is also a bit of a negative factor. So I don't want to really necessarily be Debbie Downer on everything, but the news feels, my experience would tell me that winter time like this, when you don't have tough weather, it's hard to get the market to rally. So demand is no runaway. End of January, February, whatever. We got to get a little closer to springtime, Mother's Day, all that stuff, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of keeping a foot on first base here. I'm a little cautious for a minute. I'm not necessarily thinking the bottom's going to drop out, but the market feels a little heavy for those reasons to me.
What about the softness? We're seeing a bit of a break, you said, quicker than expected in the box beef.
Well, yeah, because the kill has been really light, so usually the lighter kill, like you highlighted, less supply, right, pushes the beef higher. And I think it's maybe 2 weeks ago you and I were talking about, I was mentioning that you were starting to hear this empty shelf stuff again, that there's more demand than they can find the beef for, yada yada. And so yeah, I'm a little disappointed in the beef, but let's be a little realistic here too. Boxes got above 290 before COVID and all this other stuff. The all-time high, I believe, in the boxes was 265 or 6 all time. So now we're sitting here in the end of January, the 290 box. I don't think we should be so shocked that the box beef comes down a little bit, but I am a little surprised. I figured that what would happen, we'd finally get the slaughter caught up, and then we'd see the boxes, break quite a bit, which I guess I still think will happen. But I think you'd go broke trying to trade box beef. So, I don't want to belabor that point. Plus, the backers got a ton of margin. Beef can go down a ways, and he'll be just fine. So,
we've had that backlog of cattle because, like you mentioned earlier, we've got some absenteeism and different factors being weighed in. Is it going to take a while for us to get this catch up done?
Yeah. Now, if they could get big and aggressive on Saturdays, which is what they kind of did, in the first time we had the big shutdown, I think you could. Well, they can kill 50, 60,000 cattle on a Saturday pretty easy. So, a couple of big Saturdays, yeah, I think that'd be fine. That's why I don't really think that this is, it's not a drive the truck off the bridge kind of a deal here by any means, but it's something I think that you at least have to recognize that we're going to have to see the packer get after it. And if he does, I think the market will be fine. Now, my feeling would be that because the weather's been so good, I think you've pulled the northern yearling crop ahead. And my own experience this year would be that my yearlings are probably 30 to 45 days ahead of schedule. A lot of them are dead already, and typically they wouldn't be yet. So that, I'm wondering if we get to, like, say, the end of February, if the market's not going to realize that, gee whiz, the yearling crop's gone in the north. We're a long ways from having those spring calves fat. I think you got a chance at maybe a little bit of a supply side window there where things might look a little bit more favorable when we get to the 1st of March. So we'll see. That's a month away, but I remain, and long term, I'm extremely optimistic, as you know. So.
Well, this has been one of those, I think, unique years in raising cattle in the sense that you've gotten some decent weather. You haven't had to deal with a lot of blizzards, a lot of issues in that regard. But then on the flip side of it, you're getting a lot of these calves leaving, as you and I've talked before, Oklahoma, Kansas, heading to the feedlots because there's just nothing out there pasture wise to feed them right now.
Huge placements 2 months in a row. You're right. And largely because of the lack of wheat pasture. So, yeah, and on that topic, that's a great point you bring up. I have people talking about, worried about whether those were game-changing kind of placement numbers. I guess I'd like to remind you and them that you can only place them once. You didn't create any new cattle. We changed when they're going to get fat. We've probably moved them forward in that marketing cycle because they're going to grow better in a grow yard than they are on a pasture. As I look at the distribution of the placements, I would worry that late summer looks to me like, from a supply side standpoint, that might be a little bit problematic. And of course, August traditionally would not be exactly your spiffy demand time of the year either. So, if you were going to say, well, I'm only going to hedge 1 month. That's my choice, to be super sensitive to that, late July through September slot. And it probably actually opens up a little more upside potential for end of the 3rd quarter, beginning of the 4th quarter. So I'm guessing, of course, but that's the neat thing about trading cattle. It's not corn where that's how many we got, so much we have. Now we're going to store it or we're not going to store it, and it doesn't change, right? Cattle, you can change supply by 90 days if you decide to place them earlier, feed them longer, feed them shorter. Yeah, keeps you guessing.
And it does. And finally, these cash prices obviously softer this week as well. Is that going to continue to next week as you guys will all be at NCBA?
Yeah, wish me luck. Hey, that'll be fun, right? As the dialogue continues, whether or not we need to do something about government mandates and stuff, right? The cash market, to me, we don't have a whole bunch of leverage because we've got this little, but still a backlog of cattle, right? I think you also have a producer, and I know this is how I feel. I was a pretty easy seller this week at 137. The cattle work, the cattle make money. We could use a little of that, right? After last year. So, I would say, is it going to be a lot lower? No, I would say steady would make me happy. I would kind of lean towards steady week. But if the backer starts to get caught up here just a little bit and wants to kill a big Saturday or 2 in a row, the cash isn't going to, I don't think we get below 135 on the cash. But I just don't see that. This doesn't feel to me like the thing is set for, it doesn't feel like it's a launching pad for, we're going to, from here either. Right.
Right.
So I don't know, poor job of describing it, but I'm kind of stuck in this languishing sideways lower deal. And I think by March 1, we'll feel better about it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week, and enjoy NCBA next week.
You bet. It'll be interesting.
That it will. That has been this week's Cattle Call. As always, folks, reminded that commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, so they're not suitable for all investors. And that is the Cattle Call right here on the Rural Radio Network.